Well, good morning, everybody. Can't hear you. So we're a community of passion and we're a community of vision, and something that I was talking to Sonja about the other day was that I work a lot with people who are mission-driven investors, mission-driven company leaders. Well, I consider that I live a mission-driven life, and I'm sure that many people that I work with here and who are in the audience too might share that opinion. Now, who here is a student at university? Great, thank you for being here. Who works in business, either as a student or in your real life? And in the environment? And who thinks that we can actually change the world for the better? Marvelous, good, so I'm in the right place. So I was very lucky in that I had a super mother. I still have a super mother. And she taught me something, which was to always turn a negative thought into a positive action. So that lesson has carried with me forever, or for the 38 years I've been on this planet. And for many years now, I've been married to this wonderful man over in the corner in the white shirt. His name is Kucinich. Now, he was in Congress for 16 years, and he ran for president twice. And often on the campaign trail, wherever we would talk to people, they would say, we're so angry about the war. We're so angry that Congress is not doing what it's meant to be doing. We're so fearful about the future of the world. Well, okay. And then they would say, how do you keep going? How do you keep working on Capitol Hill or in the systems that you're working in without burning out, without this allowing this anger to actually burn you out inside? Well, you know, anger is a great motivating force. It's good as a bit of a kickstart. But with love, love can sustain. And with intelligence, we can transform. So it's really good to take that kick-starting motivation of seeing a negative, but then using your intelligence and your heart to turn that negative thought into a positive action. And so that's what we always try and do, and I really take that back to my mother as well, and I'm so thankful for her. So much of the world and the solutions that we see, are really coming from deficit thinking. When we look at what the potential of our planet is, it's a great planet of abundance. It's a planet that sustains us. We've managed to do an enormous amount of destructive activity on it, and yet we are at this present moment in time sitting in this room and we are healthy, and we're very lucky for that. But we can't take that for granted. Now, a lot of people really think, well, in order to move forward, we have to address all of our problems. We have to look at what's wrong in the world, and then we've got to solve those problems. I might take a little different approach to that. I like to look at what we do well. I like to look at how the world sustains itself, think in terms of whole systems, think in terms of positivity. So when we look at deficit thinking, we can think of problem-solution analysis. So when we're looking at an organization, maybe this line here is when an organization runs kind of well, and everything that's a problem goes below that line, and everything that's strong is above that line. Well, very often when we look at problem-solution analysis, we're just looking below, and when we solve a problem, we're bringing it up to a median. We're not looking at what is strong in the system and what we do very well, what actually works, and we're not looking at how to make those strengths stronger. Because very often if we strengthen our strengths, we move our society, our consciousness, and our trends away from our weaknesses, so they become insignificant. So looking at problem-solution analysis is not necessarily the best thing for us. We should be looking at a strength-based, in my opinion, humbly, organizational development approach, and that can work in our own lives, it can work within a structure of an organization, it can work in any kind of system. But in order for that to work, we really need to bring everybody together. If you're working in a business, it's not good enough to have all the executives come together and just decide what happens and what everybody's good at and what the business is good at. It's good to have everybody from the truck drivers to the janitors to the stockholders, the people who are working on the floor, everybody coming together in a whole systems approach. The same is true when we're thinking about the environment. We can't just think about one problem, such as climate change, and see it as a problem. We have to look at things in the context of an entire system. We have to bring all different elements into play. So if you're mixing this idea of whole systems thinking, appreciative inquiry, and then changing the world and transforming negativity into some positive action. Let's take climate change as an example. Now, I won't go too much into this because Philip here is going to give us a fantastic presentation on my favorite topic, which I would have loved to have talked about, which is soil carbon sequestration, but I will touch on it slightly. In that the problem that we see is that we're running half a carbon cycle. We're doing very, very well in burning a lot of fuel and aerosolizing a lot of carbon, either from our soils or pumping it out of the earth in certain different ways. And so we've got this big carpet of climate gases that are causing climate change. Okay, so we're very good at doing that. What we're not very good at is bringing it back down again. So if you think of the rain cycle or the water cycle that you probably learned about in school, you've got your oceans and they're putting all the evaporative water into the air. Well, then you've got trees that are helping to bring it back down, and we've got this wonderful water cycle. Well, with the carbon cycle, we need to think about the same thing. But this is our exciting opportunity because, very sadly, the way that we have been doing agriculture has completely destroyed our soils. It has made them totally deplete of carbon and structure that enables them to be rich and healthy and to be resilient to the very climatic changes that we're talking about. So either extreme wet, extreme cold, extreme heat. And we need to be able to then see, well, how can we bring this potential now? We've got all of this carbon in the atmosphere, and then we've got all our fields desperately needing carbon in them because we've destroyed them. This is our opportunity to create that link with that carbon cycle. So Philip is going to tell us a bit later about how we can employ a wonderful system which everybody knows about, called photosynthesis, to actually sequester all that carbon and to make our fields rich again, which will in turn increase nutrient density, increase yield, reduce all of the effects of climate change with our weather on our food system, and be able to move us to a much, much healthier place. Not only potentially curing the climate issue, but allowing us to actually move forward in the way that we need to. Because when we're looking at systems like this, then we're not having to use chemicals on our land, which are fake nutrients. We're not having to use pesticides on them, because we understand that when we think ecologically, we literally, the logic of nature, ecologically, then we can actually understand an entire system and the way it works. And that's how we need to start thinking. Right now, our society suffers from a different kind of thinking. It's not just deficit. I take this back, I'm brought up in the Christian family, so I looked to the Bible into some degree, and I did my degree in religious studies and theology, my master's degree in international conflict analysis. And I really see that many of the ills of our society come from the consciousness that we bring to the table. And right now, when we look at maybe the system of healthcare policy or environment policy or even international relations, we're looking at potentially a reading of something within our culture that says we have dominion over the earth. Well, I read that as we have stewardship of it. Now, if we've got dominion, we're looking at suppression, pushing away, fighting. How many of us in our daily lives use the lexicon of fight? We're fighting poverty, we're fighting cancer, we're fighting terrorism, we're fighting global climate change. Whatever it is, we're fighting something. So how about we look at something differently? We need, instead of suppressing what we don't want, we need to be working cooperatively. We need to be understanding those underlying structures, the symbiotic relationships between issues, people, and everything else. So in the system of healthcare, the very dominant thinking is about the suppression of the immune system, the suppression of the body potentially to drugs, and allowing something else to take it over. Whereas within a holistic medicine approach, we look at supporting the body, strengthening the body. When you look at international relations, we look at the war on terror, the suppression of what we don't like, the fighting of groups. When we look at it in different consciousness ways, we look at working together, understanding, working cooperatively, looking at what brings rise to social dynamics, looking at what we personally are doing and our own effects on the world. And when we look at the environment, we can look at the same. Within the system of agriculture, for example, the suppression of weeds. We must put chemicals all over our land. The suppression of pests. If we have an issue with our plant kingdom, let's go to look at genetic engineering as a means to control the plant system so that we can then move forward, except what we find is when we suppress weeds, we now have 80 million acres of American cropland covered in herbicide-resistant weeds. We have dozens and dozens of different flying pests and walking pests and slithering pests who are resistant to pesticides now, because nature out-evolves our level of thinking of fighting, as does all other systems. So it's really time for a shift in consciousness. So limited thinking, shifting to abundance, fighting power to using power, and again, from anger to motivation, love, sustaining, intelligence, transforming. So that's the end of my opening remarks, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the panel. I can't wait to hear everybody else's. Thank you so much.